Hello everyone, this is Trickflame. We're going to continue our series breaking down the different Fall Guys levels, and this time we're going to be talking about one of the final rounds, Fall Mountain. Fall Mountain is actually one of my favorite maps in the game, which I know isn't a popular opinion, but going over the level today we're going to focus on a few different things, starting with the layout of the level, the different variations, some routing through it, and some general tips I can give. I'll also show you guys my recommended routes. There's some other routes that work very well on top of the ones I'll show you, but these are the ones I'm most familiar with. In the background here, I've been showing an example of what the most bare-bones version of Fall Mountain looks like. This is what the level always used to look like before variations were added, and it's still possible to get this version of the level sometimes. This is also a good place to start to show you how to beat Fall Mountain because every other version is basically based around this version of the map. Now, if we go back and break down the different variations of the map, there are basically 5 areas where things can be added in Fall Mountain. First, we have these bumpers here that I'll refer to as the front bumpers, 2 on each side. Second, we have these 3 bumpers on this slope here, which I'll refer to as the back bumpers. Third, we have this hammer located halfway up the final ramp on the way to the crown, right in the bend. Fourth, we have this hammer that can be located right next to the crown itself. And finally, we have Big Edis, who can appear in this area towards the bottom of the crown ramps. One thing to keep in mind is that for each of these obstacles that can get added, the stage becomes more and more chaotic. On the Barebones Fall Mountain map, you know where the balls are going to land, and you have a good idea of where they're going to go from there. If the bumpers are added in, the balls can ricochet off those bumpers and end up doing crazy things that you can't see coming, so you have to be more and more ready to adapt. It's time to move on to routing. Again, I'm going to show you my routes that I prefer to use. You don't necessarily need to follow these routes yourself. More than anything else, the important thing is to know where you're going to go and to be familiar with it. Let me show you what I mean. I've taken this route many times in the past, so I know that I need to watch the ball here because it's going to fall just barely to my right. If I move too far over, it's going to hit me, so I know I need to hug this diamond on my left closely. From the beginning now, I prefer taking the right side, so to start, I immediately watch to see where this first ball is going to hit on the spinner. For a best case scenario, I'm hoping the ball will land just barely to the right of the center. If it goes too far to the left, then it will completely block my path. If it goes too far to the right, it'll cause the spinner to spin so quickly that it'll knock me over. I need to watch the ball and judge accordingly to make sure I waste as little time as possible. After this, I run along this wall here, watching the balls on my left. If they catch the gap in the wall, they can shoot back over to the right, so I need to be ready to dodge them if that happens. I continue hugging this wall for as long as I can. Next, I move slightly to the left to squeeze between these spinners, trying to stay as far to the right as I can while still being safe from the spinner on my right. Because immediately after this, I'm going to head back over to the right again, just barely getting past this red diamond. I wait for the ball to fall to my right. Right here is the point where my 2 routes diverge, my primary and my secondary route. Up to this point, everything has been the same. I'm going to continue showing you my primary route for now, then we'll come back to this point later and go over my secondary route. For the primary route, I will continue going mostly straight ahead, wait for one more ball to fall over to my right, then I head almost all the way over to the right, go past this hammer on the right side, go up the slope with some simple jumps, and go past the second hammer on the right as well. Then I just need to time my jump correctly to get the crown. Going back to the area where my 2 routes diverge, if I feel I need to run this route, instead of going to the far right, I'll instead go over to the left just a bit and actually go between these 2 hammers, the second and third from the right. By getting your timing just right, you can actually go through them without getting hit by either. I then run up the left side of the slope before switching over again, passing this hammer on the right hand side, and going up on the way to the crown again. You may think these 2 routes are very similar, and you're absolutely right. In my experience, it's better to have a solid plan to follow at the beginning, and at the end of the map, you honestly don't have many options available to you. You can really only go up the left or the right side. It's the middle area where you need to have a bit of room to improvise. For example, I normally prefer the first route that I showed where I go to the far right, so why am I taking this other route here? Well, if you look at the number of people already going in that direction and the ball that's heading towards them, that's the reason right there. Even if I can avoid that ball, I'm also going to have to avoid all the bodies laying around from people who can't avoid the ball. So instead of dealing with that, why don't I instead just veer over to the left a bit and take my backup route? As you can see, it pays off. Going into that middle portion, I'm in 8th place behind pretty much everybody in the lobby. Leaving the middle, I'm in 2nd, not far behind from the person who is in 1st. This is the reason why it's so important to have a backup route that you're familiar with, because sometimes taking your first route that you might be even more familiar with might just not be reasonable. You might need to improvise a little bit. So having a backup route that you know almost as well, it's going to pay off big for you. Moving on, it's time for my tips on how to get past certain obstacles, as well as other small things that you can do to win this round. The entire video so far has been my two biggest tips, which would be to have a route that you're familiar with and to have a backup route that you can switch to if you need to. So these are going to focus on smaller tips that help with specific situations you might run into. For the first small tip, on both the front bumpers and the back bumpers, it's going to pay to be patient. If you see that one of the bumpers is heading towards you, wait a moment to avoid hitting it. In this clip you can see that I make a small little adjustment here right before the bumper to avoid hitting it. The bumpers are moving quickly, so that little adjustment is all that I need to avoid it, and it saves so much time over getting knocked down by one of these. Similarly, you may not really even be able to tell here, but I wait just a second longer than normal here before jumping to avoid this middle bumper. These little pauses or adjustments are really all it takes and will save you a lot of time over getting hit. Another small tip, pay attention to the balls as much as you possibly can. They're really the wild card of this level, the biggest thing you can't be sure of. Watching ahead of you, moving around them, and trying to be aware of where they are and where they're going to be is really the most you can do to avoid them. Next, if there's a hammer halfway up the ramp, go on the inside to get around it. This can truly lose the entire match for you if it's at all close, and a perfect example of it right here is with me and this other player. He's easily in the lead, has been the whole game, but goes around the outside while I take the inside. Suddenly I'm in the lead by a bit. He'd been leading the whole game up to that point, but basically erased it in this one moment. So what do you do if you get to the crown and you're not going to be able to make that jump right away? The crown's a little too high, you just can't reach it. You really have two options depending on the game. If there are no hammers in your way, do what I do here. See how I swing to the outside a bit? I'm not heading for the crown in a straight line. That's because if I did, I would get there before the crown was in position. So instead, what I'm doing is curving my path a bit so I never have to stop running. I end up getting to the crown just in time for it to come down. If at all possible, you want to avoid stopping on your path to the crown. However, if there are hammers, you may not have much of a choice. In this run, I have almost the worst timing possible. I just missed my chance to grab the crown while it's down low, and there's a hammer right next to it. I need to sit and wait. So I head over here to the safe area on this side of the hammer, wait just a little bit of time, then get a running start and jump for the crown. My final tip is one that you might not really even consider, and it's one that really I can only recommend in some very, very specific situations. But grabbing people as they get close to the crown if they're in front of you can sometimes get you that win. If you see this clip, the player in front of me is clearly poised to win here. It's just the two of us up here, he's in the lead, the crown is coming down perfectly timed for him. Unless he makes a mistake, he has the win. Instead, I grab him for just a moment when we're next to the final hammer. The hammer ends up hitting him off the edge, and I'm left as the only person even close to the crown. Now, again, this is a very specific situation, and honestly, most of the time, I think it's pointless to grab someone in Fall Mountain. But if the person in front of you is clearly going to win, give it a shot. What else do you have to lose? So, how do you win Fall Mountain? Start the level and take a path that you know well. Pay attention out of the gate to the balls to see how the spinners are going to be affected. Make your way up the course using walls for cover. Using your knowledge of your route, avoid balls where you can, and make your way around obstacles, taking your time where you need to. Avoid groups of people, take small shortcuts where you can, and time your jump at the end to reach the crown as quickly as possible. Alright everyone, thank you for watching this breakdown on Fall Mountain. I hope it helped and you found it useful. If you want to see me play or join me, I stream on Twitch daily at around 7:30 p.m. Central Time, so come stop by and say hello or play a few rounds. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, and turn on notifications if you want to know when I post videos. Thank you.